Testing. turn your mics on, boys and girls. In compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carol, would you please
Yes.
do the roll?
Roll call. Jay.
Present.
Barbara Preminger. Carol York. Carol Sick. Here. George Ator.
Here.
George Werner is excused.
Okay. Jim Van Pelt. Bob Kraft.
Present.
And Shane, let the record show that Shane Meyer is here also. All right. All right, minutes from the October meeting is all in your packages. Any changes, additions? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I can make that motion.
Okay.
Motion by Barbara. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Pardon?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Robert. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One.
One what? One?
I wasn't there last.
Yeah,
You were, yeah, okay, one
I have-
abstention, okay.
and I have to abstain too.
And George was.
And George wasn't here yet. Two abstentions. Okay. We have some visitors today we'd like to take care of. Would you come up, please, Jackie? And press the button on that microphone there until that red light shows green. All right. You are,
I'm Jackie Speck. I live at 1005 Maryland Avenue,
1005 Maryland Avenue.
and
Yeah.
I'm requesting a permit to have a tree cut down in my yard.
Okay, I looked at that tree, and it's a perfectly healthy pine tree, and it's not interfering with your deck or porch or anything. I don't
But
understand.
I think it is, Jay.
What?
I said, I think it is interfering with our deck. Actually, you're the third person to look at that tree. Someone from your commission looked at that tree probably about 2 years ago when I had another rotted tree cut down in the back of my yard.
Right.
They looked at the tree, and he said, you wouldn't have any problem having this tree cut down. It's in your yard. And he also said, you have a lot of beautiful trees in your yard.
And that what?
And you have a lot of beautiful trees in your yard. I said, I would be willing to plant another tree.
Right.
And he said that wouldn't be necessary. The other person that looked at it was Mike Ball, and he said, he summed it up by saying, it's your tree in your yard, and if you want to cut down, cut it down.
That was the city manager, right?
Yeah, which you told me to call. When I called you, you told me to call him.
Well, we try to prevent that. The object of, or the purpose of the Shade Tree Commission is try as we can to preserve as much of the old growth of trees as we possibly can. And so we try to accommodate homeowners and not prevent them from doing what they want to do on their own property. But where that conflicts with our object of trying to preserve the old trees, we come to an impasse.
I know that.
So,
Well, the tree over time has just been damaged by the storm. There's probably, you looked at it, there's probably a quarter of the tree is at the top. That's all that's left of the tree. And it has pollen right over my porch. It's about 10 feet from my porch and my deck. And the pollen is all over it. In fact, I take a hose during the pollen season and I hose off the tree. It also has needles that, get in the slats of the deck and rots. It's just worn out its welcome in our yard.
well,
We'd like to have it cut down.
pollen and needles falling in the yard or falling on your deck is, I don't think, an adequate reason to take the tree down, but I understand your concern. I'll open up for discussion.
I'd like to add something. Do you have any photographs for the entire commission to look at?
No,
See what your condition is?
no, and if I had known that, I would have brought them with me.
The only
Well-
thing I have here, I have the street view. We are talking about the pine that's in the backyard, not the one that's in the front yard.
Yeah, we're talking about a cedar tree that's,
In your
a
backyard.
backyard, yes.
Yeah, it's 1005 Maryland Avenue.
Yeah. Right.
The left-hand side of the house, walk down to the back, and you see it right by the back porch. It's a regular pine tree.
Pine or cedar?
Cedar, I'm sorry. It's a
Cedar tree.
cedar tree. And it seems to be in good shape. You've had some branches taken off of that over the
A
years.
lot over the years, because with the storm. And I'm thinking of who, Matt
Notch.
Notch said, there's rot at the top, and he'd have to take rotten branches off the top of it. It's just going, it's,
I guess I have a question. Did you look at that?
I did.
So you've looked at it?
I looked at it, and it seems like a pretty healthy cedar tree. It's been topped over the years, and there's you can see some areas where the branches have been trimmed off, so maintenance has been done on that tree. But
because of storms, really. It's because of storms. We've just had it cut up, keep cutting it up because of the storm damage.
Jay, maybe what we should do is have all the commissioners in the next month take a look at the tree and then come back and,
Could we defer this
For a month?
for the December meeting, where the commissioners can take a closer look at it?
You know what's really holding up? I have to have a lot of work done in my yard.
Right.
By Matt, and he doesn't want to proceed, until he
gets the
gets.
permission to take
Yeah,
it,
so
yeah.
this is started in September.
Well, my position is that because you don't have any pictures and Jay has looked at it, we don't really have enough knowledge to really make a decision about whether the tree actually needs to be removed or whatever. So I think that has to be a suggestion that.
Okay,
we have a
but
chance-
I need
we
you
have
to
a
clarify something for me, okay?
Well, if we give a permit to take the tree down, because it's a healthy tree, it'd be a $75 permit,
Okay.
okay?
And
Under our
I'm
present ordinance.
I'm just curious about, what is that rule about if it's my tree in my yard, and can I cut it down? Is that true?
That's correct. That's the ordinances in Cape May. It's one of the reasons why we've been 41 years is Tree City USA.
I know.
It's not just the street trees, it's the trees on private property that we try to maintain, try to
Preserve.
help or try to save also.
And I appreciate that. The trees are beautiful in Cape May. Thank you for what you do.
All right. Well, let's take a look at 1005, right? 1005 Maryland Avenue, and be prepared to discuss it the next meeting.
I would suggest to bring photos too. You're asking for a vote of the entire commission. The commission can't vote if they don't have any documentation in front of them, or at least have been to your property. And because you don't have anything in writing from the city manager, backing up your story.
No, we have no.
we can't
called
accept
the
that
city manager,
word
he
of mouth.
supposedly came over and said, yeah, take it down. It doesn't work like that. In order to do that, he'd have to call, even in the present situation, even before we change our ordinances, he would have to call a meeting of all of us either a representative from the Shade Tree Commission, you, the city attorney, and whatnot, to take a tree down, without the tree being teetering on its roots, about to fall and damage life, liberty, or private property or public property. He can't arbitrarily give permission to take the tree down.
Yeah, he wasn't giving me permission. He was giving me information.
Okay.
And what he said was, if it's your tree in your yard, you may cut it down. So
doesn't
I'm just
work like that.
asking,
It doesn't work
I don't
like
think
that.
he has
That's
that.
not what,
I don't
yes.
think he has
No, it
that,
doesn't work like that.
authority to do that. That's why we have the Shade Tree Commission, so that we can hear your side.
yeah, he wasn't giving me authority to cut it. He was telling me what the rule
You
is.
just quoted that he said to you, it's your property and you can take the tree down. That was permission.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Sounds like
Essentially,
permission.
that's what
Sounds
he
like
did.
he was giving you permission to do it.
Right.
That's
And
not the way I
He's giving
heard
you that information, but now you're passing that on to us.
Right.
That's not exactly the way we work with the commission.
But I just asked you, Jay, if that was the rule, and you said yes. I
What?
just asked you, is it true that if it's my tree in my yard, I can have it cut down? And you said yes.
No, I didn't.
No, we didn't.
I think he probably didn't quite hear the way it was worded.
Okay.
I think he answered in an opposite way.
Right.
I think all of us here are small government type people. We don't like to tell people what they can do with their own property and their own yard, but we have a responsibility to try to maintain the growth of old trees. And we
get
don't
it.
like to take trees down without a real specific reason. So I think go take a look at this tree at 1005 Maryland Avenue, and we'll make a decision next month. Second Tuesday of next month. I hate to delay it, but, you know, that tree's been there for 50 or 60 years.
30 of them, we've enjoyed it.
Pardon?
30 of it, we have enjoyed it.
Right.
30 of those years.
All right.
But we've had enough of it. You know,
Let's give it another month.
so are you going to come look at it, or do you want me to bring pictures in?
Well, you can
to-
take
have to go
pictures
look.
and look at it and talk about it and put it on the agenda for next month.
And what's the location? It's in the yard?
Yeah, left, you go down,
backyard.
it's the left-hand side of the backyard.
Okay.
Right by, see it, it's hard to miss. The big cedar tree right by their deck, your rear deck, right?
Give that a- give
Yeah,
those
'cause,
directions
2 years
again,
ago,
the
we
left
had to
side.
take that big sycamore down. Was it a sycamore or a?
It was a cottonwood.
It was a cottonwood.
Oh,
You're
my
On the
gosh.
street tree
I
down.
must have written
That had a,
letters.
that had a branch that extended from from the north side of the street all the way to the south side of Maryland Avenue. One large branch came across the yard, and came across the street. And we had a crack in that after a storm, so we had to remove that cottonwood tree. But the sycamores on either side seem to be doing well, so,
They're beautiful. I love it. I love the trees in front of my house.
all right.
I just don't love the tree in the back of my house.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, and we're sorry that we have to go do that for you. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
Excuse me, if someone does come to look at the tree, could you tell me they're coming so that I can?
I was going to ask you that. So permission to walk into your backyard, you would prefer that we contact you?
That you tell me you're coming.
Okay.
What's your number so we can?
Wait. Just write it down. Don't make it public.
Microphones are on. You don't want to make your information
Just
public.
write it down and pass it around.
1005 Maryland.
No, she- I
This is
think-
not the phone number on your application here, or?
Oh, okay.
It's on the application.
I always take my little card with me.
I have it in my phone. I'll carry it.
Unless you just
Good.
close the line.
Yeah,
I don't have that on my.
Looking out for her.
well, it makes the phone heavy.
Okay,
It's like literally the top, one of the top three most irreplaceable environments.
I have photographs of the tree,
okay.
okay? If you want to.
And you
I'm
are,
sorry, 1517 Beach Drive? Beach Avenue.
15,
17 Beach
15,
Ave.
17 Beach.
My name is Patrick Cawley, Cauley.
If you want to, I guess I'll get the paper.
And we've owned the house for 30,
And this is a pine tree.
well, you
in
can
the
see
left
that.
front-
Yeah.
Your front
okay.
yard, right?
So if you look at the tree, that sidewalk that you see there next to the house, that's the other people's property. And so the storm damage over time has compromised the root system, and so it's teetering over, and it's all the way on the
Onto
neighbor.
That's
neighbor's.
it's your tree though, right?
It's my tree, but it's off, if you look at the sidewalk there, that is the other people's property. They just bought the house.
Sidewalk in front or the sidewalk
on the
leading
side.
up to the house?
Yeah, that's the property line right there.
Black Pine.
So it's leading, it's on their property, the
Yes,
sidewalk.
and so they just bought the house from the Brookses, Dory Brooks's family.
Okay.
And so they've done a lot of work on it. And he was being nice, and,
Right,
you
right,
know,
right,
they've
right,
put a lot of money into the house. They paid, I think, $4.5 million for it. And they're saying, you know, just to be neighborly, this tree is, and you can see that the way it looks, if you can see it. I think one of the nicest things that we always loved about the house, and it's designed in such a way, it's kind of a Nantucket kind of house, very symmetrical. And you look at the bedrooms, you look at main doors, you look at our dining room, we have off of both the dining room and the living room, we have open doors are there. And so everything that we've done to the house is maintain the symmetry. What this has done is we've had to cut it down off the top a little bit, because when we were doing our roof, I think last year, maybe the year before, he was showing us how animals had been climbing up the tree
Right.
and then climbing into the house. And when they redid the roof, they pulled off some of the
Squirrels and raccoons?
Yes, all in the attic space of our house. Now, what it did is that when they did the roof, he also said, you know, that tree is ruining your roof. And so we cut a little bit of the top down, but it's also the deck that is right there off my daughter's bedroom door, the slider there, that part of the deck, I've had to replace the mahogany there like a couple times over the past 30 years because it holds moisture, there's everything down there, the railing had rotted on that side. And so and if you look at, and Pete Leonard, who's our plumber, and then now Matt Abel, we've had to dig up in front of our yard leading to that twice because the roots have interfered with the, waistline. And so Pete dug it up, and then it had another problem. Matt, who bought the thing from Pete, talked to Pete. Pete came over and said, I told you until you do something with that tree, we're going to have to come back here. So we had our waistlines back up into the basement, like it's 2 or 3 times.
Is that one tree or
It's
two
one
trees?
tree,
One tree,
and
but
it splits,
Yeah.
but it's split with storm damage or whatever, and then, and it just, honestly, the house itself, the beauty of the house is the symmetry.
That's a Japanese pine, isn't it?
I don't know what it is, it just has.
Looks like
I'm
a
pretty sure that is.
So what we'd like to do, because we have stores, and we have a couple stores in Nantucket, we have a clothing line. So my wife Patricia, she goes up there and she saw that everything there is symmetrical. What we'd want to do is, if we could take it down, we want to put in because we have what is it? Oh, sorry. A lavender tree in the back, the purple flowers that come out in the summer. We love that tree, and so we wanted something that is going to have some sort of enhancement
In the front.
in the front. And we do a row of trees on both sides
Of the porch.
of the porch, and they would flower in the summertime and in the spring. And
You have to be careful there because you are a street away from the beach. I mean, there's a maritime forest in front of you.
yeah.
Still, you'd have.
Wind and
something
everything.
that's gonna be a-
Well, I think what we do is, she just saw this one house in Nantucket where they have property line trees going over, and we, whatever was appropriate that we could actually do symmetrical. And so we're finally, work on the house now because a 30-year tuition paying in colleges is over, so we decided, let's do our house now inside. So it was approved through the historic people, and we were, getting bids, and we all thought, and so this was something that, really doesn't enhance the house. And it also.
It's a little, yeah, it's just a blob that's affecting the porch, and you say it's affecting.
Yeah, it's affecting the roof, and then the animals that came in, and now that we have a neighbor that actually is, the Brookses really basically, they were kind of absentee, they rent because Mr. and Mrs. Brooks passed away. Dory Brooks, who is one of my best friends, they sold the house and sold it to this great family from Rumson, New Jersey, that came to Cape May because of our block, which is a historic block, and they were being very nice about it, but they just said, trees on.
How's it affecting his property, the property to the
Well,
west?
it's getting closer to their house, for one, but then when walking underneath it, we had to cut some branches down.
So you could get underneath.
Yeah, well, the kids don't poke their eyes or whatever. And so we want to do something that is in keeping with the nature of the house and with Cape May, which we've always done with the house. And we just feel like this is just a tree that's waiting to completely fall over because of the roots, and then because of our sewage lines, that in doing all the plumbing over inside the house, we know that we're still going to be compromised because in the front yard, coming right in front of that tree is the waistline.
Is the what?
Is the waistline that, takes all the waste out of the house.
okay.
And Pete was the one that said, I'm going to fix this now. I'll have to fix it again in the next 3 or 4 years. And sure enough, the slightest, it seems like disturbance, we get waste in our basement because the pipe breaks.
Right.
And so when Matt did it last spring, I think it was, or last
Is
fall.
is your house a little elevated there? Are you up on a little bit of a berm, or is it? 'Cause what kind
Just
of? You got a pretty high water table there, so is it a stand-up basement?
No, it's
Crawl
I bump my head. It's
bigger than a
5
crawl
or 6,
space, right?
yeah, it's 5 or 6 feet.
Not a stand- oh.
And so we use it for storage or whatever, but when we get the backup in the waistline, our basement is filled with about an inch of, let's just call it poop. And so,
Have you got, is your waste system, your sewer system compromised then?
oh yeah, that's what Matt and Pete did it, because he said these roots are interfering with the waistline. And so you have to do something about that, or else we're going to just have to keep coming back and doing it.
Right, and the tree is taking advantage of a deteriorated pipe, so taking the tree down, which we may decide to do, to letting you take the tree down is not going to solve a
Well, no,
cracked
we're just
sewer.
going to dig up all the way to the waistline, and you just get, when we
I'll
cut it
make-
down.
I'll make-
We
I'll-
cut it down, we want to remove as much of the root system as we know where it is, because the waistline, we know where the waistline is, and I've seen them dig up the pipe, and Matt and his crew, and then Pete and his crew, and then Pete was working for Matt, and after they bought it, and they said, you're just going to keep having the same problem. And so, like I say, is in the basement, we have a sump pump down there to drain water.
Right.
And then it's an original Weatherall house. The Weatheralls had it for about, I think, 75 years. The Sperry's had it for about 20 maybe, and we've had it for a little over 30, and I have 6 kids, and so they're going to be in that house for the next 70 years. And so I want to make sure that it's
Right.
taken care of when we're putting all this money into
I'll make-
redo the inside of the house.
I'll
We
make
wanna-
a motion that for a $75 fee, because it looks like still a healthy tree, but it's causing problems.
And I'll replace it with any number of trees.
I do have a question, though, about your replacement. When you're talking about planting rows of trees, are you talking perpendicular?
Well, that's like, she just had this vision that,
Right.
in Nantucket, it's basically, it must have been something like a New England kind of, the house we love about it is that it's perfectly symmetrical, all the
Right.
way up. And so we want to do something, and if there's another tree that you guys would recommend for Cape May conditions, we haven't really done any research on that.
Well, these are crepe myrtle, and they tend to do pretty well
Okay.
on Beach Drive. They're usually pretty
Okay.
salt tolerant.
And we would
But-
get as mature a tree as we could buy to put
So you're
in.
talking about putting one tree, because you had
No,
six
no,
rows.
we want to do it to where
Like
both sides
along
of the
the-
house, and then if we come in another tree, that we want to basically enhance the house and
Okay.
keep the symmetry the way it was built for.
Yeah.
And safety-wise, and even for sewage-wise, it's just something that if we're putting all this money into the inside of the house, that let's fix the plumbing to where every 3 years, we're not all of a sudden getting back to square one.
Well, I'll make a motion for a $75 fee, because it's a healthy tree, to give a permit to take the tree down because of the reasons that he stated.
And replaced,
And replace
and to be replaced with,
crepe
With,
myrtle.
yeah, replaced with plantings of suitable.
Yes, yeah, we've,
I like pine trees of one type or another, and cedar trees, because they provide a winter habitat, but.
Okay.
But I don't recommend you put another pine tree in,
No.
because you're gonna have,
Yeah.
or cedar tree, because you're gonna run into the same problem.
Yeah.
Again, so I suggest a row of trees like this is gonna
Okay,
give you some color.
and like I say, is anybody that's familiar, Chuck he's Cape May Landscaping, and he's really good about knowing what works best in Cape May.
Who?
And Chuck, it was Cape May Landscaping, I forget his last name.
Okay.
And so, but he's been our landscaper for 10, 20 years maybe.
Right.
And so he takes
Yeah.
care of the property, and
He knows what type of,
he
what
knows,
type of
and
hazard.
he loves the house, we get along really well with him.
He should know what type of hazards
Yeah,
that
yeah.
those trees are gonna face, being
Yeah.
right opposite the beach.
And
even
that
though-
aren't going to interfere with what, he knows is underground, and
Well, all trees are gonna send roots down.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got a compromised sewer system, every tree is gonna take advantage.
but it's, I don't know, I'm not sure how long that takes, but it's, right now, it seems to be a timetable of about every 3 years. That
You had
before,
mentioned that you had the waistline replaced, or you just had it?
no, they
stripped down?
dug it up and they had it cracked, so they put it back in. It was actually, when they first had it, it was.
Was it
they used
terracotta?
like a concrete pipe.
That's what I was.
Terracotta, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's terracotta pipe,
And,
and they replaced it with PVC?
Yeah, we started to, but it's like, I just think that how bad the house smells when that
Oh, of
water
course,
comes
yeah.
in.
You
It's
don't- You
like,
don't need to get into details on that. We all
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what sewer backup is, that's for sure.
yeah,
Been there, know all about that.
yeah. And so, but we love the idea of the house. It's 1906, the year my dad was born.
Right.
And we just, the Weatheralls have their family photos taken on our front porch, just about
Seems like
family
a bit of a
picture.
misplaced tree where it is very close. The root system is very close to your foundation, and unfortunately, I guess that wasn't well thought out, having the tree roots so close to your
Yeah.
waistline either. So placement-wise, it probably was a bad idea at the time. Years and years have passed by, and now you have a mature tree sitting there.
Yeah. But I'll work with anybody that, if any of
Cut
you
back.
are, I haven't been in Cape May for over 30 years. I grew up in Stone Harbor, but we're down here, we raised 6 kids through the house, and like I say, finally we're going to do work on the inside of the house because I don't have any more tuitions, so.
there's a motion on the table.
Was that?
There's a motion on the table.
I got a motion on the floor to remove the tree because of the conditions that were stated, and replant of suitable trees in the front, right?
Yes.
In the front.
And anybody that's, privy to what are some good recommendations, I'll certainly work
No,
with
your
them.
landscaper or something like this would probably have better suggestions than we would
I was
have.
going to make a comment about that, too. Your landscaper certainly should know, like, what would be, but I actually have a place right off of Beach Drive, and I find that I never have a problem with any kind of, like, flowering type of a tree. It's
We have one in the backyard that's beautiful, and it's kind of I'm not sure the kind of tree, it's kind of a
Well,
lavender.
there are crepe myrtles planted right on Beach.
The what?
Beach Ave. There's a number of crepe myrtles planted along Beach Avenue, and they do well.
They thrive.
I just feel our weather in Cape May,
Yeah.
right by the ocean, is so different than northern, it's more southern. And
Well, they always say that
I think that looks
if you're
really
within a
beautiful.
block
And
of the
they-
beach.
And they don't get, crepe myrtles, if you keep them trimmed back, they don't get real high where they're gonna interfere with your views out the window.
The only saving grace of Cape Rock is behind us.
Oh,
is
okay.
that a nor'easter coming in from the north, that basically blocks the damage to that side of the house. And so if there's anything that's a saving grace by having that kind of ugly building there is that they're like a big weather
Barrier, yeah.
barrier. And so, but it's, like I say, it's.
All right, the motion on the floor.
need a second.
Call for a vote.
You need a second.
I'll second.
Second by who?
George?
Me.
George.
Oh, George.
First, second. All those in favor? Oh, for a $75 fee.
Okay.
Make a check out to the city of Cape May.
Okay, can I do a credit card or?
No.
I have cash?
No,
I have
take a
cash?
check. No.
Okay, I'll get my wife to sign it,
Yeah,
because
just bring
I
it-
drove
bring
down
it-
this morning, I'm driving back
Bring
to
it
New
to the
York right
Shade
now.
Tree office here on the
Okay.
first floor.
Okay.
And-
We didn't,
Okay, we still have to do the vote. We didn't.
Pardon?
We have
We have to
make
vote on it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Thank you.
Glad to help.
Oh, thank you very much.
Pat, Nancy, Pat, Nancy is out until, from today.
Monday.
So when does Nancy come back?
22nd.
The 20th.
Oh, so after, we're coming down for Thanksgiving, so at that
Yeah,
point.
she.
But I'll get my.
She won't be back in the office.
Is there an application that I should take with me, and an application?
Pardon?
Is there an application?
Yeah, fill out an application again.
Do I get one from?
Nancy's not here.
Oh, okay.
It's not there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Yes.
Okay. You want to give it a try? We'll see what we can get accomplished.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah,
half an
we're
hour.
pretty good.
yeah, by 3.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Chris Gillen Schwartz, I'm the city solicitor, and my assistant Carrie Freed is joining us as well today.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
What's Terry?
Carrie,
Oh, Carrie.
Kerry Freed, F-R-E-E-D, right? You keep coming first, I'll remember everybody's name. All right, there were some questions that some of the members had on our relationship with the HPC. When we fill out an application for an application for a reconstruction or renewal or for a construction permit or something like that, we make our comments in there, and they go to either the zoning board, the planning board, or the HPC. What weight does that hold for those people?
I'm not sure what weight it holds for them. I'll tell you that it should hold weight in the grand scheme of things, because I've said this, I think the last time I was here, and I've said this at a few city council meetings too. Our development regulations and our approval processes are a Venn diagram. You have
Is
to,
what?
a Venn diagram, all the circles that
Okay.
overlap.
Right.
Everybody has to fit in the middle of that. So
Okay.
the planning board or zoning board is one, the HPC is one, the Shade Tree Commission is a circle that everybody has to fit. Those have to overlap.
Okay.
So, and when I say they overlap, I've heard this before, that someone might go to the HPC and say, said it was good, I could build a pool, or I could build a giant thing, and there's a tree in the way, so I can build it. And the answer to that is not necessarily. The standards in the code are for effective utilization of land, among other things. Those are the things that the Shade Tree Commission considers and has to weigh, because we unlike some other towns, and that's okay, every town can do this differently, more like West Cape May values trees no matter if they're in the public right-of-way or not. And a town has the authority to regulate that. Cape May has chosen to protect trees that are not only in the right-of-way, but on private property.
Private property.
And to provide a process for people to make applications to remove them. And I heard the
Lady here, yeah.
lady who was here earlier say, well, it's on my private property, I can do whatever I want. Well, in other townships and other cities, that may be the case, but in Cape May, that's not the case. We have a process for people to make applications to remove them. So to go back to your initial question, Mr. Schatz, I think that part of it is really, should be part of the application process. Somebody comes in and says to the zoning or construction official, I'm thinking about, I got a house here, I'm thinking about demoing it, and I want to do something completely new. Okay, well, if you want to demo it and it's in the historic districts, you got to go to the HPC. Are you thinking about taking out any trees? Because if you want to do that, you're going to have to either get a development application, landscaping plan review, or you're going to have to come to the Shade Tree Commission for that. But there's no falling into a vortex where you don't have to deal with the trees. And that vortex issue is something that West Cape May confronted when I was there, and we closed that gap to say, look, if you're going to the board, there's a landscaping and vegetation plan requirement that requires review of the trees on site. And then if it's not something that has to go to the board, and you're just in the construction permit phase, which is also the HPC phase, sometimes people just go to the HPC and don't go to the other boards.
Right.
So that, I view the construction permit and HPC avenue as its own thing, because some people just go to them, and then they get through HPC and they get issued a construction permit because they don't need variances or they don't need a site plan. So, but are you proposing to remove a tree to put that in that addition? And if that's the case, that's something that can be indicated on the application materials, or be a checklist item.
I understand a tree in the footprint of the house, and within 6 feet of a house, a tree to be removed. They have to replace tree for tree, correct? According to this ordinance, according to our West Cape May ordinance.
Right, so, and that's the little table in there that actually shows it. If it's in the footprint or 6 feet, it's, 1 for 1.
1 for 1, someplace on the property.
Correct. And then if you're outside of that, anywhere else, then it's 2 to 1.
If it's outside of that, it's outside of that 6 foot or footprint, they have to, if they want a tree taken down, take a tree down, right?
Correct.
They have to do 2 to 1?
That's the way that table is drafted right now, yes. And that's the rule in West Cape May.
Where does the $75 a tree come in?
I believe they're permanent.
That's in,
$75
$75
non-refundable application fee,
there's
and then an
75 per
additional 75.
application per tree.
For each
And then
tree.
if it's approved, it's another 75. So you're really talking to take a tree down, it's $150, right?
Correct.
Didn't we talk to change that?
That will be the new language. which-
Well, right now, it's
Not
just,
the application, but the.
right now, it's just 75, only payable if approval is given.
No, well, that's currently in the ordinance now, but what you have in your packet is the revised version of what Mr. Gillenschwartz has done. What he has added is in bold. So if you look through your documents, all the bold things all the things we talked about last meeting is added in bold. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but that $75 is per tree.
Well, right, so I'll tell you exactly what it says in here. It says, and this is what we talked about last meeting,
Page 4.
Right, was a 75 for the application, and then a 75 removal fee. So the way that it's worded now, and this can be potentially changed or modified, when the application is filed, the applicant shall pay a non-refundable application fee of $75 for each tree removed. So you want to take down 5 trees, it's 5 times 75. If the application is approved, the applicant shall then pay an additional 75 removal fee as a condition of issuance of the tree removal permit. So the way that I would interpret this right now, we can clear this up either way, whatever the suggestion is. The application fee is 75 times how many trees? If it's approved, it's just a $75 fee.
Or is it $75 per tree approved for removal to get the permit? So as you use, 5 trees as, just a point of reference.
Is
So
that-
five trees initially, 75 times 5,
370.
Yes,
okay? And then if all 5 trees are approved for removal,
be another 5
then it
times
would be
75.
another 5 times 75 for each additional permit. Or he's saying we could change the language where it would be 1 fee regardless of the amount of trees for the permit.
I can see the logic of doing it the way that it's worded now, and just to clarify it, and this would just be the way that I was looking at it, was if somebody submits an application for 5 different trees, you're gonna do 5 different assessments and maybe 5 different species, and you're gonna discuss the merits.
And
pros and cons.
all of this is for trees 3 inches or more in diameter, measured 4.5 feet above the ground. If they're 1.5 or 2-inch little trees and stuff like this, we have no authority over that. So
Right.
3 inches or more, measured 4.5 feet above the ground. Okay, go ahead.
Sure, I was just thinking that the application review part of it is really a lot of where the work's gonna be, the administrative burden. The removal part of it, if you're granted, it's like, okay, well, then you can get your removal fee. But the,
For one fee of $75 regardless of the number of trees.
Correct.
right, and this can be, it can be done the other way, too. I can just see the
Right.
logic of charging the larger portion up front, because that's where I think a lot of the work of the board is,
And how would you interpret it as written right now? How would you interpret that?
that way. But it should be clarified,
Okay.
just so that there's no confusion about that. But that, I can see the logic of keeping it that way, but if the board thinks that there should be a per tree fee, I can see that, too, so.
I have an opinion, but does anybody else want to chime in?
What?
I have an opinion, but I'm just liaison. I'd like to hear what other people would think.
Well, give your opinion.
Well, my opinion is,
Listen.
if my opinion mattered, I would think that $75 for the application, and then $75 per tree after that. But that's
Right.
Reverse of the way,
Talked about.
the way it's written.
reverse. So $75, you have, again, we're gonna use 5 trees because that's just the talking point at this time. So
Right.
I like
$175
Chris's-
regardless, 5
Yeah, I
trees,
do
whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if all 5 are approved, the permit fee for each individual tree.
It's another 75.
Yeah, there's 2 separate types of application. In other
Or-
words, getting the approval of the application. Then when it's approved, then it's charged for how many trees, correct? Am I right on that?
So council's opinion on this, if I understand you correctly, is that the work on our end
Talked about.
is more at the approval process, when we go out and, review the tree and, take into all considerations and discussion and everything. That's why he's saying that the $75 per tree at the application should be applied, and then just the opposite, $75, one fee
doesn't make any
for the
sense.
removal of the permits. Well, it does, because the work on our end is up front, not in the back.
But
So our work is up
It's
in front
similar
end.
to the way planning and zoning boards review the variances. Like if you're asking for C variance, D variance, and interpretation, you get charged a fee for each one of those things, because it's a separate thing
Right.
that the board
Right.
has to consider.
Exactly.
And that was the logic in thinking, okay, if you have the burden on the board of reviewing 5 trees versus 1,
I get you.
seems like
Sure.
to be more. It's
Yep.
gonna take more time to go over
Yeah.
each one.
I like that
Right.
method.
Yeah, I do too.
That's fine.
Right.
So what do you think about the barriers around trees before construction starts?
Well, let's
Yeah, let's
we
finish.
finish addressing this issue first, and then, one issue at a time. Jay.
Before we finish that, I want to go back to the HPC,
Okay.
because I understand what you're saying, how it's handled during the construction permit process, and they're supposed to, when they apply that permit, there won't affect any trees, or they need to submit a landscaping plan?
Well, I think, know that that's clearly
It's not
outlined.
now.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's something that can be proposed to be clearly part of the process.
Right.
I think it is already part of the process, it just may not be clear to everybody that, oh, by the
That it should be
way.
the process.
Right.
Okay, but shouldn't there be something in our ordinance that backs that up?
There can be, and we can suggest language to,
I think that's important, because I know we've been burnt a couple times because the HPC has done an end around, and
The language, I think it could be as simple as adding a sentence somewhere in here that, in addition to everything that's stated in here, when somebody applies for a construction permit, they're going to indicate whether or not there's proposed to be removal of any trees.
that works.
And then it just becomes a checklist item at that
Yep.
point. So I can add that, well, I'll find a place to add it, but that can easily be added.
Perfect.
May go back to that, too.
Yeah, while we moved on to a second subject here, can we stick with one subject at a time and at least clarify where we stand with the original discussion of the permit fees? Can we,
What, yeah.
at least discuss, does anybody have any opposition to what is suggested right now, any other opinions? And at least let's end that discussion before we go on to the next discussion.
So I'm a little confused. So are we doing what is said in here then about the removal permits and the cost?
Yes, but
Right.
So-
Chris is going to add a clarification so that we know that the removal fee is just a flat $75 fee, not per tree, as the application.
That's the discussion. You guys have to
Oh.
figure out
That's
what
per
you want.
tree.
Oh, we didn't decide yet.
No.
That would be at the permit process. So now you received your approvals, and now you're applying for the permit. Whether or not it's multiple trees or single tree,
single.
it'll still just remain a $75 one-time fee, not for each removal of each individual tree.
There's nothing inherently right or wrong about either approach. It's just front end, back end.
Right.
Right,
And-
right. But I agree
My-
with you.
my one-
All work is up front, like you said, and that's
Right.
where there's,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
there's more time.
Well, my one opinion on that is, first of all, I've always felt the $75 was too low
Right.
for a permit.
So this.
So at
this-
least if we did charge the 75 for each permit granted, we're at least at 150 per tree. And I think that just seems a little more.
George,
I agree.
you were not here for the
No, I
original
wasn't.
discussion.
Not
right?
for
So-
that
And
one.
actually, that's what we had proposed. Shane had also proposed that,
Yeah.
and I agreed at the time, and it did get written slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
I would be fine with that, because I still believe that $150 per removal of tree in today's world is,
Is-
a
Right.
reasonable
Yes,
fee.
I think it's
agree.
more than reasonable at 150 per tree.
I agree.
So I would agree with you. I would think it should be 75 per tree per application. Approval is an additional 75
Well, that's what's in
per
there.
tree.
No, it's
Per
not.
No,
tree.
it's
Not,
That's just
so-
75 flat fee. If
Right.
you cut down 10 trees, it's $75.
Well, on page 7, 482-4B, if the application is approved, they have to pay an additional 75 removal as a condition of issue of the tree removal permit. So he puts a $75 non-refundable application in, and if it's approved, it's another $75 for that particular tree.
What you're saying, George, is to make it per tree as
To
well.
make it per tree.
Right,
Yes.
so
Yes.
the front end, back end, they're mirror images of each other.
Right.
It's all the same.
And if they apply for 5, they pay 5 times 75, and you may say, you know what, you can do 3 out of 2, and in which case
Right.
they pay 3 times 75.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes,
So it's
that's.
I agree with
now
that.
paying
That-
150.
I thought we
That's
had already
fair.
discussed
better
Yeah,
that.
than
whatever
the
tree.
150
Right.
removal? Or 150 across the board, raise 75 to 150 is.
I have a question. Didn't we
75 and
discuss that?
Yeah.
During the last meeting, that we were going to raise the actual removal fee? We were going to do the $75 application, but then once approval, we were going to raise that price from 75?
And
I
that
think we
That's what we-
discussed that.
We did.
Last.
We're just clarifying.
Did
We didn't clarify.
No.
Yeah, because that was discussed, actually. And that's why we came up with this idea instead, feeling it was a little more of a fair process to the homeowner, so that he wouldn't have to shell out the full 150 up front, because he
Right,
may be denied.
That's-
So the $75 would cover, the cost involved.
And that money-
for the city.
That money, 75 per tree, and then if approved, another 75, that money doesn't go into the shade tree account. That money goes into the general fund,
I
of the
can,
city.
and I can see a logic for doing 75 up front for the review, and then 150 on the back end per removal, because then that becomes, well, we might need a code enforcement guy to keep an eye on that or something like that. So there's also a logic for increasing the fee for removal, if that's the way the board wants to go with it, so.
So now we're upping the permit fee to 150? So you'd have the original fee of 75 for the application, and then 150 if approved
No.
for permit?
No.
No,
No.
75 and
75
75.
and
that's-
75, right.
But you were suggesting something different, correct?
He was trying to make the point that the city's spending money having our
Right.
professionals out there reviewing this, so that is money being well spent, I guess.
And if you were to go 75 and 150 on the 2 steps of the scale, there's a basis for that. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't see that as overly the city like confiscating anything. We need people to keep an eye on
Yeah.
these things after the fact too, so.
We could always review that in a year from now, if that's what we wanted to do, raise it that extra amount. So
And
if you-
again, if we pass this with minor modifications or put this to the city to pass it, and if we find some of the sections not workable, we can always revisit it, correct?
Absolutely, and that can come in the form of a recommendation to your council liaison,
Because
and we
it took us 2 years to go from 8 inches to 6 inches. Took us 2 years to get that through. And
Now we're 3 inches.
So is there an agreement with this application process?
I agree with
So-
George Ator with, and I think Shane, I think we were on that same page when we discussed it at the last meeting, that $75 application fee per tree, and if approved, $75 permit fee per
Yeah,
tree.
that's good. That's good.
Would you want to make that into a motion?
Yeah, we should put that to a vote.
Want to make that into a motion? That way everybody can vote on it?
Okay, I'll motion that suggestion.
George, you want a second?
I'll
or-
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 what?
I'm not sure if I even understand.
So
Okay.
I can try and confirm it here, right? What the board is considering doing is, there's 2 fees, and it's $75 at the application phase per each tree.
Right.
And then if, however many trees are approved, if you apply for 5, you pay 5 times 75 at the application, right? And if the board approves 3 out of 5, they pay 3 times 75.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's not.
So it's
that's-
per tree each
I- I
time.
That's it per
understand
tree.
that. Yeah, I didn't realize.
So we
it
had a
was per
first and a
application.
second. Does it pass? We have to vote. We all say aye or not?
Yeah, I think-
No, I don't think we have to vote.
Well, I think there's an agreement here. Barbara, do you agree with that?
I understand it now, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Also, barriers around trees.
okay.
It's a solid,
Wait,
what?
can we end this part of this, we didn't bring this
We
to a
did.
vote yet. No, Barbara didn't.
I move that we approve, that
yeah,
we
I
go
didn't
with
vote
this
because I
application,
didn't
as it's on the,
understand.
as
But I
it's on
do
the
now.
sheet in front of you, application of $75 per tree, and when it's
what-
approved, it's another $75
Right.
per tree.
All right.
All right? That's as you have it down here.
Now I
I'll hold the motion. Do I have a second on that? Or-
We have
Yeah, that's
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the rest of us, I'll shut up. Barriers around trees. Usually, it's 1 foot per inch in diameter around a tree that's going to be saved. That's very simple. A 10-inch diameter tree, it should be 10 feet of a barrier around a tree. And I suggest, rather than using plywood and stuff like that, is to allow, with fence posts or posts in, to allow a plastic barrier, the plastic mesh, that ugly-looking red barrier around a tree, with the idea of nothing can be placed into that, or, into that area around the tree.
So my recollection of the discussion at the last meeting was, we wanted to have a rule in there, but provide the board some flexibility to do it on a case-by-case basis, so that subject to the discretion of the board, you may think, okay, it may be
Ideally,
impractical to do that entire rule.
I,
And then we put in here post and rail
Post
fencing.
and rail.
Right.
Because I thought we didn't want the plastic mesh fencing for quite a few different reasons.
They
First,
collapse.
They collapse, they did not, they're also unsightly, they hold garbage, wind-blown garbage. There's a lot of issues that come with those, and they tend to get tangled up if it is a construction area. They get
so
tangled
you'd
up.
rather go with
Post and rail.
a solid plywood or
No, no,
whatever
no,
they
no.
put up?
No,
No.
Bottom of page 6.
What?
Bottom of page 6 in bold. It has-
Like you would build a fence, Jay. You would put up posts and rails, so you'd, 2x4s, let's just say, for simplicity. And, you would build it in that manner.
That makes much more sense to me.
It's also, it allows us a visual of the
Right.
tree, too, to make sure they're not storing materials in there and
Yeah.
such. And plywood, the wind shear on
It'll
plywood
get
is
wind
just so
shear, yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
It'll get knocked over.
So
Not
you'd
to mention,
rather
it's not
go
as
with a-
expensive.
And it's expensive. Yeah.
So rather than use stakes around a tree and putting a plastic mesh around a tree, you'd rather go with a rectangular box with plywood fencing around the tree to be
Well,
protected.
not plywood.
Not plywood.
Not
because
plywood.
You won't be able to see behind the plywood. If they throw debris back there, you wouldn't see it.
So what are you proposing? You can use plastic mesh?
It says
Post and rail. So 2x4s, 2x6s, 4x4s for your posts, 2x4s for your rails.
Oh, okay.
You know.
All right.
A fence, basically a fence.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because West Cape May, they're ugly. I mean, you know, to have that, it's a plywood box around a tree. It looks awful during construction. So this would be a little bit more graceful, I think, so, all
There's a
right.
lot of reasons for it. As I said, I don't know if you can hear me, maybe you can't hear me that well, but also material can be stored behind plywood where we would not
You
be able
can't
to see that.
Yes, you'd have
Right.
to get out and take a look behind it, see what.
Plywood is like a sail in the wind, right? The wind shear on plywood is going to be so drastic in a heavy storm, it might get knocked over.
Right.
There's a lot of different reasons. to
Question,
use. Yeah,
what's
question.
post and
Okay.
rail? In other words, what's the material?
Wood.
Wood or plastic?
No, no.
Okay, but it's not like plywood. In other words, you can see through.
Right.
the post. Okay.
And
got
something
it.
substantial, you know, would
Okay,
have to be the,
understood.
I mean, most recommended for posts are typically 4x4s. They don't have to be, you know, but that's pretty standard. And then the rails can be 2x4s, which would be fine.
Okay.
As far as barriers are concerned, we're going to go with what's the
Yeah.
Yeah.
highlighted portion
Yes.
in the revision.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Disputes.
Time.
We had 2 disputes today. People come in, they didn't like the decision. The first line of dispute is when they come in to the board at a board meeting. The second, if they don't like our decision, should be to the city manager, who shouldn't arbitrarily just say yes or no, you can do this, unless it's a hazard, tree is tottering, it's going to fall, it's a danger to the life or limb or property. That's understandable on an emergency basis, and that's covered in here. Public Works, city manager, any member of the Shade Tree Commission after a storm can look at a street tree and say, yeah, that tree is ready to fall in the street, it should come down. No question, get it done, take care of it. But when the disputes come, the city manager has to hold, I keep calling it a come to Jesus meeting.
It's a hearing.
He can't just arbitrarily say, take it down.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's page 7.
Yeah, it's page 7.
You know, unless it's an imminent hazard.
Oh, yeah, and look, there's always.
Emergency,
there's
an
always gonna be
emergency,
flexibility for-
we all understand an emergency basis after a storm.
But even in those emergency cases, there's a post facto application
Okay,
process in here, just like there is in West Cape May, which is,
Right.
we understand that there are going to be emergency situations, but we want to make sure that it's actually an emergency. So
right.
take a
And when
picture
we,
of.
and when we do that, because we have a meeting with the city manager, perhaps you, representative, or representatives from the Shade Tree Commission, and we hash it all out, see if we can't work it out.
Right, and that's provided in here. I
Okay.
participated in one of those meetings last
All
year,
right.
and I thought it went well, you know.
Yeah,
and
this
to
is,
have-
this
have-
hasn't come up, but 2 or 3 times in the X number of years I've been here, except for the past year, and it's come up 3 times. And the end result is, what I consider to be a perfectly healthy tree has come down.
Well, what the Shade Tree Commission does is difficult, because there's always going to be that tension between,
Yeah.
well, I want to build this thing.
Well, you have to understand, the Shade Tree Commission will almost always, unless it's an emergency situation, come down to the side of the tree. That's our job. I think that's our job. They'll always come down on the side of the tree.
I just wanted to, while we were scrolling through here, there was something about the HPC that you
Yes.
had questioned earlier. And I can easily add that construction office application language, but I did want to point out on page 7, or it's actually 482-6, and I added language in here that says, for the avoidance of any doubt, applications to the HPC that propose removal of any trees shall be required to comply with this section in addition to any other requirements or conditions imposed by the HPC. Decisions by the HPC will not exempt the applicant from compliance with this chapter. So that's the case now, even if we didn't change it.
Right.
But it's just putting it out front and center.
To,
As a matter of fact, the HPC does not approve tree removal applications. We have another
The
board.
HPC does not want
And does not approve tree removal applications. It's not their jurisdiction to do other
right.
things. Just like you're not reviewing for architectural stuff.
Right.
That everybody has to comply with all the things that are applicable.
Okay.
Easier said than done.
Well,
Yeah.
that's self-evident, but it's not, for some reason, I can see sometimes why people are getting confused by that, but I don't, it's already built into the code, but we're just making it clear.
Clear.
Right and center.
Okay.
The only other thing I'd like to point out about that is, so after it's all said and done, the hearing, the city manager does still have the right to overrule. It's his ultimate decision in the end. He can overrule the board, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Everybody,
The menu of options are there. He can reverse, he can affirm, he can alter the decision with alternative conditions, but also built into that review process is the city manager will be looking at the same standards that the Shade Tree Commission is on the initial decision. You know,
Right.
the standards for removal or not removal, that should be the starting point for anybody reviewing it at a higher level.
at the end of that meeting, everybody should be equally happy or unhappy.
Well, that may not happen, Jay. So that's the case. So somewhere, somebody has to be the final arbiter. And in this case, the final arbiter would be the city manager.
Right.
He's on the payroll, he's, you know, he has the so-called expertise, more so than we do.
It's-
So I guess that language, I don't think that can be changed. I mean, ultimately, he'd have to have that
So-
authority, right?
Yeah,
Right,
but
and-
everybody's in, but as a result, everybody's at this meeting. Everybody that counts is going to be at the meeting. The applicant,
Correct.
Shade Tree Commission member or members, the attorney, and the city manager.
Correct.
So everybody should be equally happy or unhappy with the.
But what happens if you're not?
Pardon?
Let's say we disagree with the city manager.
The attorney's
That's
got
the
an
point.
answer.
So we may come down to a point where the board feels one way, but the city manager opposes how the board feels.
The fact,
In this case, the city manager has the ultimate
final.
decision in the end. He has the final decision.
that
They
that is
still-
the fact.
They still, the city manager will still retain final decision-making power as the appellate body. However, it's a two-part review process when it goes to the appeal.
Yep.
That's built into this, which is,
just
he's going to
like an appeal.
first try and evaluate whether there can be a compromise.
Right.
Can the two parties reach an agreement first? And if that can't be done, if that can't be facilitated, then during that process, he's going to hear everything, and he's going to say, look, if you guys can't work it out, I'm going to make a call. That's what the process, that's the way it's outlined in the proposal.
And again, for an appeal to the zoning board or planning board, what they decide, that's the end of it. There is no appeal from the zoning board or planning board.
Right, well, and one of the reasons to have standards tied to it is that the next stop after the city manager's Superior Court in New Jersey, so it can't be whatever a person's feeling, it has to be based on standards, because that's, the court's gonna wonder, what did you base the decision on?
Right.
And I wanna be in the position of saying, we have standards, and everybody reviewed it pursuant to the standards.
And not only that, if it does go to a court, this will all be documented, and the city manager's decision will be made in this meeting in front of the public.
Right, there's a record of
So
it.
that way, whatever the judge wants, the evidence, he's going to be watching our meetings and hearing our discussions.
Right.
Well, with the changes that we suggested and whatnot, if you do that again, can you come back in December?
Sure, I can, and what I got from this is, I made the change to the application fee, I'm gonna add that construction application language. Is there anything else from the board?
She's done a wonderful job. Thank you very
Yes, you
much.
did.
I just, wait, I have something. When we talked about a replacement, we talked about when a tree is removed, when removal is, permission is granted for tree removal for construction or whatever reasons, and we say that we want them to replace a tree. How is that going to be enforced?
Yeah.
Code enforcement.
Code
Well,
enforcement?
no, it's a good faith. There is nothing, there
That's
is
what I'm
no,
saying,
yeah,
but-
there is no commitment as of now. Like, we just had that homeowner who was here.
Right.
And he's saying, in kind, if, you know, given the permission to remove the tree, he'll plant new
Right.
trees. Now, we have language, as I understand, for tree removal in the footprint of an addition of a building, or whatever the case is, and it's a 2-for-1, whether or not it's in the footprint or not. So, but in the language, there's nothing of an approved tree removal, and just other than a good faith agreement by the homeowner saying
That's
that
it.
at this point in time, yeah, I'll plant a few more trees. in a
Shade, Shade Tree Commission's going to be having a
Well,
code enforcement liaison. If you look on page 8 in the bold, it says that there's going to be a liaison from the code enforcement. So if we see or think there's going to be an issue, we can
But
send
is
that
there a
person
code
out.
to enforce? I think
Yes.
that's what George's
Yes.
question is.
The clear answer to that is yes, because what we have is a process where people can take out what's been deemed a natural resource, which is trees, whether they're public or on private land. If they're taken out, the condition of being able to take that out, to do something else with it, is replanting a natural resource. And if that hasn't, just the removals occurred and not the replanting, the code enforcement officer 100% has the authority to walk out there and say, you haven't complied with your approval, just like somebody who doesn't comply with a site plan or zoning approval. It's the same thing.
So it becomes our job then to make sure that the person who is putting in the application, once approved, like we had today, with that application, he would have to make sure, or we have to make sure that the note is in there, that he will replace the tree.
Oh, is
We
it
don't
code
have to.
enforcement that does
Because
it?
otherwise, there'd be nothing that we can enforce
It's not-
unless it's an agreement
Not
from the
us.
homeowner.
It's not your job and that you don't have to go follow up on that, but what I would suggest is for these things to be enforceable,
Right.
to be indicated in writing somewhere. It could be a
yeah.
letter from the
Right,
secretary
okay.
indicating, on X date, we approved your removal application, here's what you have to do. Two,
Right.
you know,
I understand.
bald cypress trees or whatever it is.
Exactly.
If there's a letter with a date to that person, emailed to them with, you know, and they paid their fee,
Got it.
that's the record of it.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I think that's another, get into another thing. I think as a commission, we need to look at the application and redesign the application itself. You know, by adding diagrams, you know, some kind of idea of where on the property these trees in question are located. That way, it's always in our files. That's the application itself. My goal with this is, I'd like to see this presented to City Council in the beginning of next year. Once we get that moving, it's a 3-month process before it becomes law, and then we can just continue to add to this as we go.
I wonder if, excuse me, I wonder if there should be,
I got you.
if there should be some sort of, like George said, follow-up to that plan. If they don't plant a tree, you know, they go out and check it out. Should there be a fine or something connected with that?
There
If
is.
they don't, oh, there is.
I mean, like I said, the connection between taking it out is doing whatever the board says in terms of replanting. So if that isn't occurring, we could, you know, put a time frame on that. You could put a leash on it, and if they don't comply with it, you know, the code enforcement officer could go out there and say, look, you haven't complied with your approval. I see you removed it, but there's a replanting required here.
So then he can put a,
He could
Fine.
walk out there and send them a notice of violation, hey, in 30 days, if you don't come up with a plan to plant this tree, or whatever the compliance thing was, then I might have to issue a summons for municipal court. That's usually the way those things proceed on the front end. They try and, they're looking for compliance, not to hammer people with tickets, but
so then this should be on our application, like you said, rewrite the application.
Yes.
If you're replanting a tree, you have to, code enforcement will follow up.
Yes, and you have to
You're
have some
not-
kind of documentation as part of that application. I think that's what we need to work on after we get this process
Yeah.
started. Hopefully, within that 3 months, we have something that fits well with this ordinance.
I did get, just briefly, I did get some email correspondence from Mr. Werner, and he had some questions as well. And so I think he'll be at the next meeting, but it might just to make sure everybody's getting their comments addressed, I wanted to.
thank you.
Okay to email you with questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Thank
make
you
sure
for
you
your
don't
work on
email
this.
to the rest of the commission. That way we don't, if you have more, you don't want to create a, what do you call it? Can you explain that?
You don't want to basically call a meeting via email. You can send them directly to me, and then we can go back and forth with advice, you know, if that's.
Or at least, or maybe at least 1 or 2 other members, but you can't share it with the entire commission because that will constitute a meeting.
I would suggest if anybody wants to email me with any questions, you CC our council liaison on the email, so he sees what's going on as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't believe we did it.
Thank you for being very clear.
I have 2 things that have to be mentioned, though,
appreciate
and has nothing to do with that.
Simple instructions, understand.
That's the
This
goal.
is just 2 other items that just came up. This has nothing to do with you, so you're off, you're off the hook with this one. But first of all, 347 Congress, there's where
What's
that, 347 Congress Street, there's the owners they had trees on the property, they were in the footprint or of where a pool was going to be, they took those down. Well, now they put an application in, I think in May or June, to remove two
Thank you.
city
Thank you. Great job.
street trees, large sycamore. And I denied that and recommended to Ron Manier, for pruning. They just put in another application last week to have those two sycamore trees removed.
Done.
Congress.
Congress Street, okay.
347 Congress. And, they're saying that the trees are dying, and they're not dying, it's fall. The leaves are falling off. There's some branches that could probably be trimmed. Again, we can have Ron take another look at it, but I just want to because the construction right now is taking place right near the roots of the one sycamore tree, and I want to make sure that that tree is protected in some way. So we can't put a barrier up yet, correct, until this ordinance
have
thing is
these.
passed. So
We can't enforce that.
I just want that to be known because they're
Watch it.
well, according to another commission member, they had a private landscaper there trimming branches off of the street trees. I didn't notice any major cuts on those street trees, but all of the street tree work should be done by the person who the commission always appoints. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So they should not be doing that. Second thing is an application for 218 Grand Street. Same situation, similar situation to the first woman that was here. It's a large black pine tree. This is very close to the house. They want to replace it somewhere on the property with a redbud, which I don't know how well that redbud would do in that close of proximity to the ocean, but it is a native species. My point is, this tree does not look like it's unhealthy, but structurally, it's kind of an odd structure. I can see a little bit of concern about this tree blowing over at some point or whatever, because it's almost like it's cantilevered. The weight is all on one side of the tree, and where the other side of the tree is sort of, non-existent or doesn't balance out. But my point is, I think, just like we're all going to go and look at the other person's tree, I think it would be a good idea if we all gave an opinion on this tree, too.
What address was that?
218 Grand Street.
Okay.
So I don't want to approve this until we look at that. There's certain trees that are obvious to approve, but that one's kind of a,
Well, if you want to give permission to take it down, it's a reasonably healthy tree, 75 a tree.
no, I understand, but I'm saying,
Want us to look at
don't you think it would be a good idea for the rest of us
Yes.
to look at that? Since it's a similar situation, I don't want to say we're setting a precedent not granting permission for one homeowner, we're giving it to another homeowner.
Yes. I have a quick question.
And that's it.
Signs on a tree,
No.
you're not supposed to put in, is that just a city tree, or does that apply to trees on private property?
All trees. The reason that was put in there was,
I had to chase down to people on public housing,
public housing.
signs on trees. So it
Okay,
applies
so
to
it's-
all trees.
All trees, okay.
not
And so
healthy.
what do we do? Do we tell Nancy?
We can get code enforcement to go and tell them to take it off.
Okay.
Code enforcement will
I've
go
got
ahead and
one.
take it off.
You got some?
Until we get city council to arm the Shade Tree Commission, with semi-automatic weapons, we'll let code enforcement do it. What?
Okay,
Yeah. We,
adjourned.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much for coming, and we got a lot
I'll
accomplished.
second that motion.
Second it. And we got a lot accomplished today. Thank you. Pass that blue folder down.
All of a sudden say aye.
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 Who made it? Oh, Jay.
Let's turn off our microphones.
I can't believe we got this done in an hour and 50. I can't believe we got this done in an hour